Come on in, Alex. How you doing? I'm good, thanks. Okay, this is just a test right now for audio. Carol, are you there right now? Just want to do a little test. Oh, I think I know why, because let me try this for a second. Okay. Hello, Cosmos. Just checking to see if I can be heard. Hello, Bella and Carol. Can you hear me? It's Lon at the podium. Well, I'll try another way. I think I can do it like this. What I'll do is I'm going to take this, the YouTube, on my phone. I'm going to put this, and then there's a delay on my phone. There we go. This, and then there's a delay. There we go. This, and then- Good. I am self-testing now. Good. I am self-testing now. Self-testing now. Great. So definitely the So definitely the Cosmos can hear me. Yeah. Okay. So the Cosmos can hear me. Okay, good. So let me just confirm. Hi, Bella. You can hear me, correct, Bella? Okay, I need to. That's strange because I'm being heard on YouTube. Okay. Can you hear me? It's Lon at the podium. Don't know who's where in the cosmos right now. Somebody needs to respond. Somebody needs to respond. Okay. Go ahead, yeah. Okay. So we have a cosmos that's not really, they're getting set up, so clearly that's strange. Okay, I'm going to
Were
assume.
you waiting for someone to use their mic?
Oh, thanks, Mantha. Excellent. Okay, perfect. I'm glad you're in the class today. Can you hear me clearly?
Yep.
Great. Okay, good. So
I didn't realize that the time had changed last week, so
the,
I missed class.
the time had changed? Oh, because of Easter.
Yeah, I didn't realize
Right.
we were doing 10 to a, or yeah, 10 to 12, so I missed class.
No, we didn't do 10 to 12 last week. What made
No,
you think that?
I thought that was what it said online.
No?
I tried joining and it didn't connect, so.
Okay, just a second. I want to make sure that we are speaking the same language.
Yeah.
First, what online made you think that there was a class from 10 to 12
Um,
on
maybe
Friday?
I just saw announcement wrong. I read it wrong, or I was
Okay,
looking
can
at the
you,
wrong
I just
class.
want to make sure, because you may not, usually my experience is, Mantha, if one student has said something, probably other students have felt the same or done the same. So can you tell me exactly what you were referring to as an announcement that made you think, oh, here it is. Malagai's got this.
Yeah, 10 to noon
Oh, okay. So,
on April 1st.
okay. So, right. Okay. So, when you saw that announcement, did you
I
see
tried joining at noon because I slept in and it didn't connect. And so then I went looking at the announcement board on DC and saw that it was from 10 to noon. So I thought I had missed class.
Okay, there never was a class from 10 to noon last Friday. So
that's why I was, yeah.
Let me
I
just
just
clarify.
got confused, that's all.
Sure. Yeah. Let me just, because Malagai's, so let me just clarify because I don't want to cause any confusion for the students. That announcement that you were referring to was an announcement that said, just to be clear, optional, April 1st global class, right? Is that what you were referring to?
I think so, yeah. I just didn't fully read it. Like some of my other teachers did have class, so that's why I wasn't sure if we were having class on Friday or not. So
Some of your other teachers had class last Friday?
Well, they gave the option, like you said, it was optional, but like I said, I didn't know for sure if it was optional or not. So either way,
Okay.
I didn't end up coming.
No problem. So. No, hold on just a sec, because I think I understand now what's going on. Did you think that April the 1st, last Wednesday, was actually Friday, April the 3rd?
Probably.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
So that's all right. I got it. Because first of all, nobody had a class at the college last Friday. It was Good Friday.
Well,
so
I did.
nothing was happening
Not
here.
class.
Like the campus was closed. Okay. So then, all right.
Yeah, it was just a misunderstanding, and so.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Yeah. I'm just thinking, is there anything I need to change? But I don't think so. It was just waking up and you saw something. And okay. Well, great. It's good you're here today. And can I count on you then to do what you've been doing so well with the live chat? And I'm going to consider now you in the live chat, the moderator of the live chat, and the scribe are my wingers. I'm the centerman, and we're aligned. In hockey, okay? So I can count on. Great. Okay, good. And then you'll get your 5. Excellent. Okay. Well, as always, for everybody here right now, we still have 5 minutes before we begin the class, but we're doing our usual troubleshooting at the start. We'll see what we have, and we've got 2 technicians on it, which is great, Elgin and Andrew, and they're trying to get the smart board connected, which they've done. Excellent. So what did you do? I mean, just so I know for the future. You unplugged it. I should have. I mean, I turn it off, I turn it on, but I should have unplugged. Yeah, no, I'm just thinking for workarounds. I'm always trying. Great. Thanks. That makes sense. Perfect. Okay. We're all good. Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, this one? Sure. I usually take everything out on Fridays and I put that in the podium because I don't want anything. It's all good. Great. Yeah, thanks. Okay. And that, by the way, just, I don't know if you can do that today, but that camera has never returned. I've never been able to get that camera back on that monitor. And I know you tried. Remember, you did some work, but then I've lost it. Yeah. Okay. Another time. Okay. If you could. But I'll be in touch because actually I have just 2 weeks left here, but then I have to teach through the spring, so I'm going to be here for May and part of June. So we'll get it fixed then. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah. Good. So we fixed the one problem that I needed to be fixed for today, and excellent. We have Mantha in the live chat, and people are joining. I see Ebenezer, Samar, Zohair, Bella, Carol are all there, and Mantha will be watching for comments there. Okay, so I'm just going to get the big board fully populated in the right configuration, and then we can start the class, and here we go. So I want the notes on the other side. So we'll put the notes there. Great. I want the space station, or I should say the moon spacecraft, Orion, and I want that here so I can manipulate that. Good. Okay, so that gets us the live picture of what the Orion spacecraft is seeing as they're making their way back to Earth, which is really important. I can also get the telemetry one, but let me try that. I have to do first 2 steps here. Okay, so first, mouse has to sit there. It's very sensitive, that mouse. And then we'll come down to the telemetry window from NASA so we can actually get, yeah, okay. And then we'll get rid of that. Good, so we can now, and then there will be a voice. From Mission Control, the Johnson Space Center in Houston, we will hear that person. We might, let's see. No, but we will, let's see if we can get closed captioning up here. No, So that's the telemetry window, and we see, the feed. We see the live picture from the spacecraft, from the 4 astronauts heading to Earth, and that's good. And then just to make sure I have everything up here on the big board the way it should be. Yes, okay. I've lost that one, but let's see what will come back. Okay, so we're just in our troubleshooting tech working phase of the class before we begin. And as everybody knows, working tech has become an actual, well, I'm not going to say a living, breathing human being, but since we're in an era right now where we have 2 species on planet Earth, we have biological humans, carbon-based, and we have silicon creatures. This is the tech, the technium. Everything tech now, particularly artificial intelligence, is a new type of creature on Earth. And we're calling that working tech. And that's the age of our existence in the 3rd millennium. So let's come back there, and we have to dominate. Well, I wouldn't say dominate. That's a very strong word. But we have to be on top of and mastering working tech. Because working tech, if allowed to operate autonomously from the human, can mess everything up for the human. And this is the reality of the world in which we all live right now, is that we are creating a world on planet Earth with 2 living species. There's the carbon-based biological human species, and there's the silicon-based digital artificial species that humans have created. We might call that Frankenstein, but we're not going to, because we humans are smart enough. Come on in, Victor. We humans are smart enough to be able to master this new species. But the reality is, if we humans are not smart enough and don't have the ability to concentrate, we will lose control of this planet to the silicon species. That is what is happening on planet Earth in this 3rd millennium. And I'm not making any of this up. So come on in, Victor. Great. We are just about to launch for our 12th class of the semester, and everything is working. I just want to make sure that we have finally this here. I just want to tee everything up. Good. Okay, because boy, do we have a lot of ground to make up today. And I will just shut this, and then for those of you in the cosmos right now, we are watching on the big board the live telemetry raw feed from the Space Mission Control in Houston. And the host of this broadcast is narrating what's on the agenda today as the 4 astronauts return to Earth. I'd like to continue listening to this with the in-person students. But for you in the cosmos, you can't hear this, correct? You can only see it on the big board. So if you'd like to see this, go to the telemetry feed. I'm going to, and I think I put it up here. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mission Control Houston. Lovely. So for the Cosmos, we just listened to Mission Control in Houston giving a live update on the 4 astronauts in the Orion spacecraft, or the Integrity crew, making their way back to Earth. If you would like to see that yourselves with the audio, the clear audio, just go to YouTube and enter the NASA's official broadcast, the telemetry raw feed. And if there's any confusion, Mantha will help you with that. Carol also is really good with space things, and she might be able to help you in the live chat too. But I'm going to continue on with the in-person group here and bring in the presentation, because we have a really important class around conquest today. And I think what I will do is I will, after that, I'm just doing a double check on the tech here before we start. I want to make sure that this is all going to work and I can manage this with one click each time. Yeah, good. Okay, so I can bring up the map, I can pull that down, and I can put back up the live feed. Excellent. Okay, so welcome everyone to our 12th Short History of the World class. And let me try that again, make sure, good. Okay, one-man band here. I got to so many things, but we're good. Okay, welcome everyone to our 12th class of Short History of the World of this winter 2026 semester. We have 3 classes left, including today. We are way behind with content. So I have a creative solution. There's always a solution for how to deal with a change. And so I am going to be jumping ahead today to a critical turning point in the story called The Conquest. But then I'm going to be bringing in other things as we carry on through what will be a fairly long lecture, because there's so much content. But we'll take it bit by bit, and if we need to stop and maybe go into a short activity, we will. It really depends on your attention. If I sense that it's too much content for all of you and I'm losing you, and I can usually tell by looking out when you may be disappearing into your phones and other things. And I'll ask you too if this is too much content to be handling. But there's a lot to cover, and we also have a very interesting moment taking place in the world today, and that is that tonight at 8:07 p.m., the 4 astronauts who've just been on a historic mission to do a flyby of the far side of the moon will be re-entering and splashing down in the Pacific Ocean. And they have been on a great adventure. It has been historic. In the first time in more than 50 years that we humans have had a manned, womaned mission to the moon. And not only that, but in about a year or two, even more is going to happen. We're going to be landing humans on the moon and beginning to build a base there. So it is the beginning. I can't stress for you, unless you've been not even connected to this, but I'm sure you have. I can't stress what you're living through. You're living through the moment in the history of civilization when we humans are about to start building a colony on another celestial body. This happens to connect with a story in history that's also very important. And if you look at the chapters and the breakdown of the story I've been telling you so far this semester, I mentioned to you that a lot of this was building towards something called the conquest. And that was when the two halves of the planet, the eastern hemisphere, everything east of the Atlantic Ocean, everything west, come together and meet for the first time. This is when Christopher Columbus and others from Europe went across the Atlantic Ocean and discovered the Americas. And for them, those explorers, it was kind of like the astronauts going into space, because for them, coming from Europe, let me just show you a second, and I'll try to do this quickly today, but just give me a moment so I can bring the map in here, and we'll do it like that, and then we'll do it like that. Great, great, okay, good. The link between humans going to the moon and Christopher Columbus and other European explorers looking at the Atlantic Ocean and seeing that as completely unexplored space, and then landing in the Americas, is sort of similar in terms of the human adventure in exploring new worlds. And so here we are, we can actually have a class today in which we can explore together the mission to the moon, which is in the background. I can tell you factually in real time that tonight you can watch 4 astronauts splash down in the Pacific Ocean after they've just been on a historic mission to the moon, in the same way that you're about to see today explorers from Europe in the 1490s landing in the Americas for the first time. I mean, what a connection. What an educational experience. What an opportunity I have to help you to understand something about the human adventure, human exploration, and the conquest. And so there's all this perfect storm stuff happening today. And we'll talk about it. We'll explore it together. I just have to make sure that I tell you the critical story today, which is the conquest. And I also read to you, at last, an eyewitness account, probably the most dramatic and impressive words you're going to hear from me this semester, of a person who was there at that moment when the two halves of the planet came together, and was writing about it, and has been collected in a terrific history called Guns, Germs, and Steel. A primary source eyewitness account of a person who was there at the time that Columbus, just afterwards, 40 years afterwards, who saw what happened when we humans came from one part of the world, traveled across the Atlantic Ocean, which was like space for a lot of people then. I will even show you in the lecture that there was a place that we would even consider at the time the NASA of its day. It was a school right on the tip of the western continent, right here. I will show you. I'm sort of getting ahead of myself, but right here, the tip of Portugal, looking out over the Atlantic Ocean, there was a cartography school, right looking out over the Atlantic Ocean, where people came to learn map making and navigation. And those people were looking out over the Atlantic Ocean in the same way that Jeremy Hansen and Christina Koch and Reed Weissman and the other American astronaut have been looking at space. So this is going to be really interesting today. Well, before I really begin and make sure I stick to my plan as best as possible, the most important thing is that we have to just do a quick review with all of you And I'm going to keep that short because a lot of what we've covered so far will come out in my lecture when I sort of go back and forwards a little bit, but I'm going to be sticking to the conquest today. And so in terms of review, I have to make sure that you're on track for your assignments and for your grades, because this is a critical time of the semester for all of you, not just in this class, but I'm sure for other classes as well. So I want to make sure you're all on track and ready. So let me just make sure everybody's clear right now. The second assignment that you just submitted was due on April the 2nd, right? So you would have handed that in already, and I will be marking that this weekend, okay? I have a lot of marking to do, so you'll be getting those marks back. The critical thing is you have a third assignment, your major assignment of the semester, that's due on April the 23rd or the 24th, is it? Let me just make sure. Are we all, I'll go back and take a quick look here and see what's on DC Connect. Hold on. So that I can, yeah, so here we go. Let's go to the homepage right there. Let me just go down. Okay, so yeah, I'll just make sure the dates. Our last class of the semester is Friday, April the 24th. Just a second, please. Just don't do that today, Tech. Just be nice. Just stay. Just don't speak to us now, Tech. Everything's working. You don't need to announce yourself. Okay. So Friday, April the 24th, if you hand it in then, you will receive no bonus. But if you hand it in on Thursday, April the 23rd or earlier, you will get a 10% bonus. Does anybody have any questions about this final assignment? Malachi, please go ahead, okay? And take the microphone because others may have, and you know I've turned it on for you. Please go ahead.
So I was going to write about the creation myths, but I was kind of confused by the assignment.
Yes.
Because I was also going to talk about how like my religious beliefs in Christianity. I was going to write that in my essay. I
Yes.
was wondering if I could use like the Bible as like a way of like a sort of source in a way.
Of course you can.
Okay.
That's one source of three.
Yeah.
So let's, one of the things that I wanted to do today, and I'll do it now as part of the review, was actually have one student be a little bit of a test case for their assignment to make sure that everything is being handled. So would you mind coming up and standing here with me and holding the microphone? Okay, just so we can do this together and everybody can see you. Okay, and you can, well, you can stay wherever you like, that's fine. So Malachi, can you just tell everybody, what are you thinking of doing your third assignment on right now?
So I was going to be about creation myths. So in class, we talked about the scientific and religious start of creation.
Yes.
And I remember in the class, I was asking, can they both coexist?
Yes.
So that question was lingering through my mind throughout this entire semester, making me want to question the science beginning, religious beginning,
Yeah.
how they are connected in a way, how they're different, and then wrap it all up together by saying my personal belief and how it aligns with both.
Sounds great. Sounds you're on top of it. You've even got a question. You want to explore this. So the question was, would you like to? Can you use the Bible? And I said yes, as one source of three independent sources. So is that clear, or do you want some explanation from me on what the other sources should be? Or what that means, or do you understand what an independent source is?
Well, I understand that I can't just strictly just use the Bible. I need to use like external sources.
Yes.
Especially with the explaining the science part, I can't just go based on the Bible to explain the science.
Sure.
Explanation, right?
Okay.
So I understand for the assignment, I'm gonna have to use like references from the class that you posted.
Yes. Yes.
Obviously, there's research studies online, and then that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you're on it. I just want to make sure everybody's clear on what I'm expecting in terms of the integration of course material, which is part of the marking scheme, and then the 3 independent sources. Referring to the course material in the class is not an independent source. I'm expecting you to do that all the time through the semester in your discussion post. So I will be expecting to see you referring to course material in the body of what you write, okay? But you don't need to cite that.
Okay.
But then, in the body of what you write, I'm expecting to see you making reference to 3 other sources that you do cite in your works cited page at the end. You don't need to do an in-text citation. What I'm asking for is that you make reference to your research in what you write, and then you cite those sources in your works cited section at the end. That's all. If you do a video, for example, and you want to cite your sources properly, put your sources in the credit roll at the end of the video. Works cited, and then I see that at the end of the video. Okay?
I have a further question then.
Sure. Yeah. Make sure all of you understand, because the research part of this is an important sort of part of this assignment. It's a bit new for all of you. Go ahead.
If I use the Bible as a source,
Yes.
how would I cite the Bible? Would I just put the chapter and the page number, or how would I do it?
Well, you can use MLA or APA as a format.
Okay.
So there's science-based, which is APA, MLA, which is more humanities-based. Just, I'm not sure exactly how the scriptures would be cited, but all you have to do is go to an MLA site, and they have a lot of resources, and just enter how to cite the scriptures in MLA or APA, and they will provide you with the template.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you for answering my question.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thanks, Malagai. Does anybody else have any questions about their third assignment, or anything that is on their mind, anything that they're worried about, or yeah, go ahead, Maya. Yeah.
I'm working on my third assignment, and I guess I'm also a bit confused on if my topic.
ahead.
Okay. Let me just pull up.
Sure. I'm going to make sure that everybody's clear and ready for your third assignment before I start the lecture, because actually, this is the most important part of the class. Your final assignment that you all want to receive a really high mark on, and I want to help you get it. So, Maya, yeah, go ahead.
So mine was the afterlife and why humans are obsessed with it.
Come on and stand here so they can see you, okay? Everybody can see you. Great. You stand over there. Yeah, that's fun.
Here?
Yeah, perfect.
So my question was the afterlife and why humans are obsessed with the afterlife.
Okay.
And I was going to be talking about Socrates' philosophy on it.
Yes.
And the ancient Egyptians' philosophy.
Nice.
And a couple other ones, but I wasn't sure because I wouldn't be using the course content as much for this one.
Well, we didn't really look at the afterlife. I touched on it here and there, but certainly Socrates was a philosopher that we definitely looked at more closely. So when I see you referring to Socrates and his ideas, I will know, Maya, that you have been inspired, and you're referring to an important figure in the course. So that's good. That's exactly what I would be looking for. But then beyond that, if you're bringing in ideas from ancient Egypt or other cultures that we didn't cover, that's exactly where I would see you doing your research. So I love the topic, and it will help for your focus if you have a question that you want to answer about the afterlife. But just to make sure that you don't try and do too much, try and have a specific question. So just to help you for the moment, what might that question be that you would try to answer?
I didn't have the question, but I found the ultimate takeaway from it. So I'll leave it so I don't spoil the whole presentation right now, but I'm
Okay.
also going to bring this to the modern world too.
Excellent. Okay. Is this an actual written essay, or is it a presentation?
It's going to be a presentation.
Okay, well then we're going to have to get Maya's name as the first presenter on the list, because in the last class on April the 24th, I'm leaving it open for presentations. And anybody who presents to the class automatically gets a 10% bonus. So, yeah, Very important that we make sure we've got this covered. Okay. Do you want to hand this to Ryden, the microphone? Yeah. Okay. Yes, you can. But let's make sure in terms of time. Okay. We'll talk about it. Yeah. Right.
So if you submit it on Thursday, April the 23rd, and present on the 24th, you get a total of 20% bonus.
This is, I like this. This is a good creative thinker. Well, I have to think about this because I like the fact that you're taking initiative and you want to see if you can do better. But here's my answer, okay? First of all, your presentation has to be something that is done within 10 to 15 minutes maximum in front of everybody. So in order for you to present, I need to see you present. If you're going to be sending me something in advance, what would that be? That's not your presentation yet because it's not Ryden speaking to the class. It's Ryden presenting something written. Maybe it's a PowerPoint. But here's what I will say to you. What you can't do to get that 20% extra, what you can't do is if you hand in a written document on the Thursday for that extra mark, and then you come in on the Friday and you just read that out loud to the class. That is not a presentation. That is a student reading out loud what he wrote or she wrote that was handed in the night before. That's too easy. But I've never done this before, and I love the question. If you hand in a written 1,400 to 1,500 word paper for that extra 10% on the Thursday, you get the 10%. Then you come in on the Friday and you say, I'd like to present an abbreviated version of this in 8 to 10 minutes, which will require you to actually stand in front of the class and deliver your paper in 8 to 10 minutes. And if you did that and it made sense, you would get another 10%. Absolutely. Because really what you're doing is you're doing two assignments, but the pressure will be on you that when you come in and do the abbreviated version, I'm going to be watching to see if this student has simply just taken a few paragraphs and is just easily reading them out to the class in 8 to 10 minutes, or if that student has made an attempt with some visuals behind him or her to do a proper presentation. Then, if you do that, you get the extra 10%. You've nailed it. You get 20%. I've never done this, but I'm prepared to do it only if I see real work going into the presentation. And it would be very instructive for the student to learn this and try this, because doing a presentation is not the same as just reading out loud something you've written. And you may have seen this from other professors through your long career as a professional student, which is a professor will come in with a PowerPoint and will proceed to stand at the podium and just read out loud the bullet points on the PowerPoint. And that is their class. That is their presentation. That is not a presentation. That is reading out loud what you've already prepared. A good PowerPoint, a good Prezi is when you prepare the slides, look good, very simple, but you stand in front of the class and you talk to the class and present to them. And as you flip through the slides, they are behind you and you've memorized more or less what you're going to present. So you can present straight to people, not stand here and read out loud. Here comes another slide. And then we have a dense slide with all this information and everybody falls asleep. And nobody comes to class anymore because they know they can get it all from a PowerPoint. So if you put effort into the presentation, Ryden, absolutely. And if you would like me to speak a little bit more right now on how to make your presentation in class much better, I can do that, or we can do that after the class, and I can help you privately. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I'd love to see if you take the challenge.
But if I were to copy the other student's idea, like make a music video and
Yes.
go up and like dance
Go ahead.
in the class, do I get that 10% too?
Depends how
I'm a third.
effective it is, and I'm open. I really like the fact that you are trying to do more, but I have to tell you that when you want more given to you in terms of extra marks, I'm expecting you to do more. And remember, though, that 20% is not if you were going to receive 60%, now you're going to get 80%. It's 20% of the mark. So if you were going to receive 30 out of 50, and now you are getting an extra 20%, you would get 36 out of 50. Right? Okay. Well, then let's do this. All right. Let's conclude this, and I'll go to the Cosmos and make sure we need our scribe because we have to make some important notes. So it's Maya or Alex today, whichever one is. It's Alex. Go ahead and could you please start a new card called presentations, and we're going to make sure we have a proper list. And because some other things need to be said too, now that we have presentations officially being made. Maya has already said. So number one, presentations on final class, Friday, April 24th. We're going to do a little list, and we'll see the first presenter, who is at the pole position, the toughest, scariest position. She will be the icebreaker, and she might just get a few extra marks just for coming in and breaking the ice, is Maya, M-A-Y-A. We'll just keep first names to make it quick writing. So now let's see. Is there anybody else right now in the Cosmos or here that would like to do a presentation in the final class? Malachi, number 2. M-A-L-A-C-I-A, Malachi. Ryden is thinking about it. So we'll just put Ryden question mark, okay? Anybody in the Cosmos?
Ruzan said he hasn't decided yet.
He hasn't decided? Okay, thanks, Mantha.
Yeah.
I'll let Mantha bring it to our attention if there's anything. I'll just focus on the nucleus now. Well, here's what I'd like to say to everybody else, including those in a distant solar system, still in our Milky Way galaxy, all the asynchronous students, and there are many of them. There are 110 students in this class. For those of you in the asynchronous distant cosmos, if you come to the in-person class and are part of the audience for Maya and Malachi, you will get some extra participation marks. Now, I'm assuming for those of you in the distant solar system that you've listened this far in the recording. Most of you are, but some of you don't. I know that. You don't watch the recordings, but most of you do. So here's the challenge. Maya and Malachi deserve the biggest audience possible for their presentations. And Ryden, if he chooses to rise to the challenge, should feel that when he's walking into that class that day, there are going to be people here. And he just might want to present in the end because there will be people. Not only that, but every person who attends in person is going to receive a card after every presentation. And they're going to write down what they thought of the presenter's presentation. So Maya comes up on that Friday, first presentation. She presents, and everybody's going to have a card in front of them, and they're going to be asked, could you please now write down, anonymously or not, what you thought of Maya's presentation? And I'm going to give Maya all of those cards. And the same will happen to Malagai. And the same will happen to Ryden. And the same will happen to anybody else who decides to present. They get their peers reviewing their presentation. And students who presented before in my other classes love these cards when they walk out because their own peers telling them what they thought. And there's some great comments that get done. So that would be done. Finally, to those of you right now, like Jack, Alex, Victor, and those in the Cosmos right now, I'm expecting participation in that final class. You will receive your participation marks and a little bit extra too if you come and sit here and participate as a good audience member out of respect for your fellow students presenting. I would be heartbroken if I came on the final class and Maya is here and Malagai is here and nobody's shown up. That would be a profound sign of disrespect for your fellow students. If for some reason you can't make it for the presentations, you must email me and let me know in advance if there's an emergency or something, and I will understand. But I'm going to assume that Victor will be here, Ryden will be here one way or the other, whether he presents or not. Maya, of course, will be here. Jack will be here. Alex will be here. All of you in the Cosmos will be here in the Cosmos. But if you want a little extra marks, come in person. And we shall see. And maybe it will be a great class, as sometimes the presentations are, but it really depends on student attendance. That has been my experience with the presentation. Okay, so anybody want to say anything? Mantha, are we good in the chat?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Mantha, you think we might see you live on the final class for some extra marks in person?
Probably not. I have 2 overlapping classes with you. That's why I'm often on my phone.
Okay. So you won't get the extra marks, but you're already getting extra stuff because of your good work as the moderator of the live chat. So you're in a good position. Okay, you've earned yours. Okay, then I think we need to fly through some really important content as best as I can, and whatever else I can't cover, I will post things for you online. Okay, so let me just have a little bit of water and get ready, because this happens to be my favorite class, the Conquest, because I get to read something out loud that's quite powerful. Have you read this yet? The first about collision at Cajamarca from Guns, Germs, and Steel? No? Okay, well, you've got the book, so. Okay, excuse me. So let me bring this up. And let me help you understand something really important. Let's start with one of the most famous figures in the story of human civilization, Cristoforo Colon, also known as, in the anglicized version, Christopher Columbus. There he is. We are now in about the 1490s, 1480s, 1490s. We have jumped ahead quite a few centuries. And I'm going to go back in a moment and fill in some important turning points for you so that you can understand how we now have reached a point where a human being who we believed had studied at this cartography school in a place called Sagres, S-A-G-R-E-S, on the tip of the Iberian Peninsula. If you look at the map of the world and you go over to Spain and Portugal, which you will see, I can zoom in a little bit more, but I don't want to get too technically crazy here. But take a look and you see just the edges of Africa there jutting out into the North Atlantic, and you go north and you will see Spain and you will see Portugal. That's called the Iberian Peninsula. And there are two countries there, Spain and Portugal. Very important now in terms of what's about to happen. It was the Portuguese and their king, King Henry, who at this time in history had created a lot of interest in seafaring and global exploration. And he created a school in Sagres that sat right overlooking the Atlantic Ocean on the edge of Portugal, where people would come to study map making and navigation. And they were all there because they wanted to understand, how do you get across this big body of water, the Atlantic Ocean? Nobody yet, in any concentrated way, had made this voyage from the Eastern Hemisphere to the Western Hemisphere. There had been some attempts by the Vikings a few centuries earlier in Scandinavia. It's believed maybe the Chinese had made their way across the Atlantic, but these trips had never been well documented, and eventually the people who landed in the Americas came home. So there was a lot of interest in the latter part of what we would say is the 15th century, the 1400s, in this idea of, well, how do we get across this body of water? What's over there? We're pretty sure the Earth is actually flat. It's not round. We've determined that through a lot of the scientific exploration that had been happening up until this time, but nobody had yet really tested that. Nobody had really tested the idea that if the Earth is not flat, and if the Earth is round, that means that when you go over the horizon, you're probably going to come around it to the other side. You're not just going to fall off the Earth somewhere else. Christopher Columbus, was one of these visionary, entrepreneurial, mercenary, rough adventurers who was anxious to be the first one to go around the planet and come around to what he believed would be China or India, the Eastern world. I'm going to come back to that in a moment because I need to fill in something for you.
Lon, just before you continue
Mantha,
on,
yeah, good. Go ahead.
Ruzan is saying that he has a different knowledge of that situation, in which it was due to the Ottoman taxation raids in the Mediterranean Sea that caused the Spain and Portugal to find different naval routes to reach the Asian countries.
That is one small aspect. And when I actually come to explaining why Columbus left, how he left, and what the pressures were on the Queen and the King of Spain and their mission to fund Christopher Columbus's trip, we will understand some of the bigger reasons. But yes, this was part of it, but this is not the principal reason that Roseanne is giving. It's actually one smaller reason. There's a very important other reason or two that I will explain. I haven't even, I've just teased you with this. I haven't yet explained the voyage. I'm just
Thank you for
telling you
explaining.
about, okay? So hang on, okay? Roseanne,
Yeah.
wait until you, but thank you for bringing that to the class's attention. And it's really important, but first,
Yeah,
let
he
me
was just
explain.
trying to clear up the confusion of his own.
Yeah. If
I'll
you
let you
look, I want to just go back in time a little bit to just take you up to this point in the next 5 minutes or so, as quickly as I can, as to how it was that there would be this person named Cristoforo Colon from Italy, great explorers that will come out of Italy, how he could emerge in our story. Well, we need to understand what happened since the decline of Rome. And last week, we saw the story of the Roman world, but I barely scraped the surface with you on that. And I'm going to scrape the surface again to simply say that when we talk about spells of our god kings, that story ends with the decline of the Roman Empire. And what I wanted to tell you last week, if I'd had more time, is that the Roman Empire began to decline, in large part because it too fell to the same spell that Alexander the Great had also fallen to, which is that it began to worship, or the leaders demanded that they be worshipped like emperors. Alexander, if you recall, he had to return from his great campaign in India. His men would no longer fight for him the way that he wanted, because he had really begun to demand that he be worshipped like a god king. Well, Rome, in the same way, also unraveled over a period of time because of that. There were other reasons, but Julius Caesar's assassination and then the emergence of his adopted son, Octavian, who would then rename himself Augustus, become our month, August, and he emerged as the first emperor of Rome, is an example of how the Romans themselves turned away from a republic to emperor worship, the cult of a personality, the rise again of a god king. That really was the end of the Roman Empire, when the emperors began to accumulate more and more power. The next chapter of the story that I was going to tell you about was that in spite of the spell of the god king in history, in spite of its attractiveness to many humans in our story, in spite of the fact that so many societies in the story of civilization have defaulted to the dictator, there has been something else going on in our story that should give us hope. And that is that in the greater world story that I was going to tell you, I was going to show you there was an emergence of a new type of individual called the trader, the entrepreneur, the person like Marco Polo, for example. He was an Italian adventurer like Cristoforo Colon, and he went on a great trip all the way across Eastern world to China, and he began to link these two parts of the world through his desire to trade with the Chinese world on what was called the Silk Road system. This new kind of person, the trader, who began to travel with his caravans, his camels, and his boats to other parts of the world to bring back resources, spices, and materials, and trade them over new road systems, was a new type of human. And this is who Christopher Columbus was, the kind of person who wanted to open up the world to become richer. Not necessarily to learn about another culture and bring cultures together, but to trade with that other culture so they can make more money from that transaction. And Christopher Columbus was inspired by a particular book. And this is where we come back to linking together this idea of humans opening up the world now with these new trade networks and the story of what's about to happen with the conquest. You're looking at a book. Books were now being published in the period between the decline of the Roman Empire and eventually the emergence of a new world, a new Europe with kingdoms and a Christian world that will eventually begin to evolve into a sort of separate little countries in the European world that had once been dominated by Constantine and the Roman Christian world. We will see technological invention and scientific invention beginning to accelerate. This has very little to do with the God King. It has to do with the human desire to invent and to explore. And in the 1400s, about 40 years before Cristoforo Colon is about to leave from the edge of Europe, books were being published for the first time by a printing press that had been invented in Germany. Christopher Columbus, I'll use his English name now, had been fascinated by a particular book. Those are his notes in the margins of this book. Here's the really interesting, difficult question. I haven't yet spoken about this book, but I've spoken about the person who wrote this book. What book do you think Christopher Columbus would have been reading not long after the printing press had been published? A book that was being widely printed now. The publishing world was emerging. This was like the internet now. This was the first printed words. No more handwriting, no more copying out books by hand. Humans had invented a way to take little sort of blocks of letters and you put them down onto a big sort of piece of paper, and you can actually create copies, printed copies of a book. What book did Christopher Columbus have that might have inspired him to travel far? Does anybody want to try and answer this? It's the book that was written by a person that I just mentioned who also came from Italy. Go ahead, who's that?
Bible?
Is it Roseanne?
Yes, it's me.
Go ahead, Roseanne.
Is
What
it the
book did he
Bible?
What's that?
Is it the Bible?
Sort of, but no. It will become the Bible of a new way of looking at the world. No, the answer to your question, I'm just being a little cute right now, Roseanne. The answer to your question is no, it was not the Bible. But the first books, literally, that were printed by Johannes Gutenberg, the inventor of the printing press, was the Christian Bible. This is not the Christian Bible. This is something else. But it was printed. Okay, I'll help you. Because I haven't really spoken yet in detail of this person. The Travels of Marco Polo. Do you want to write that down, please? Marco Polo is somebody that you've probably heard of before, and I mentioned as the European entrepreneur who went eastwards by land in the 1200s. And it took him 2 years to reach China. And he stayed in China for 27 years. And the Chinese emperor at the time, Genghis Khan, of the great Khan family, the Mongols, the great Mongol conquerors, they were also very smart. Genghis Khan hired Marco Polo to be his emissary. And Marco Polo stayed in China, this European from Italy who went all the way we might even call him the first global citizen. He stayed there in another part of the world, learned the language, became a close confidant of the Chinese leader, and eventually he came home and he wrote about all of his experiences being in China, seeing all the people, the restaurants, the noodles that will become pasta, the great gunpowder that they had, the iron that they had forged. The Chinese engineers and technology was so sophisticated, far beyond what the Europeans had. And he wrote about this. People read this. And for the Europeans at the time to be reading about what Marco Polo had done 200 years earlier in a book that had been widely published was opening up the world to this new culture. Well, Christopher Columbus read this book and he said, I think I can do what Marco Polo did by water. I think I can reach China much faster than Marco Polo did by going around the planet and getting there in a few months, maybe even a few weeks, if he can chart things properly. And so here we go, the trip. I wish that this story about his trip across the Atlantic Ocean would end as well as Marco Polo's trip did, without much violence, cruelty, humiliation, and conquest. But the story I'm about to tell you of what happened when Christopher Columbus went across the ocean and discovered this landmass that he never knew was really there is going to end largely badly for all the people who were living there. And so I want to set this up for you to understand that we're talking about contrasting visions right now. When a person encounters another civilization, when we humans eventually, if we do, encounter some other form of life or some other form of intelligence, or that other form of intelligence encounters us, as it will probably happen in the future at some point, how will that unfold? Destructively? Cautiously? In a friendly way? Will these two unknown parts of the world, parts of our universe, decide that only one of them can exist? Would those two parts decide that one of them is superior to the other, and that other thing that has been discovered is an inferior form of life, a savage, and should be eliminated, killed, destroyed? In Marco Polo's case, when he went to China, he and the Chinese elite came together in some ways. But when Christopher Columbus went across the Atlantic Ocean and is about to discover what he does, it's going to be very, very violent. Let me explain. This is one of the boats, a replica of the 3 little boats that Christopher Columbus set out with in 1492 from the western edge of the Western world, just near Sagres. And what he had done is he had been an entrepreneur, and he wanted to raise money to raise some ships that he could take across the ocean so that he could get to the Chinese world and the Indian world for all their spices and riches and bring them back and make himself so much money. But nobody would fund his mission. He went from European country to European country, to the kings and queens, asking them for money, saying, I can get there and do what Marco Polo did much faster, and I can open up a trade route by ocean, and we will make so much money. Eventually, after about 6 years of trying to raise money, just the way you might today if you were starting a company and you want to raise money for your initiative. Eventually, the king and the queen of Spain said, yes, we will fund your mission. Why did they do that? Well, what Rouzan said about the Ottoman world, the Arab world, the Muslim world, is not wrong. At that time, the Queen and the King of Spain were trying to reestablish a Christian world in Spain. They were staunch Roman Catholics. And the Muslim world that had established the caliphates in Cordoba, for example, in southern Spain, in Baghdad, beautiful city, they presented a great challenge to the Christian world. This is just near the end of what became the Crusades. And the Crusades was a period in European history when the Christian world was fighting against the Muslim world for dominance in Europe and also for the control of Jerusalem, the religious center of the monotheistic world. All Jews, all Christians, and all Muslims consider Jerusalem their spiritual center. Muslims as well, Mecca and Medina on the Arabian Peninsula, very, very important too. When Muslims pray 5 times a day, they don't pray to Jerusalem, they pray to Mecca. Jews, when they pray, they turn to Jerusalem. However, what's important to know is that the King and Queen of Spain, they were very worried about the Muslim world. And they felt that if Columbus was able to open up this trade route, they would have a new way of bringing riches in from another part of the world that would make sure that they, the Roman Catholic leaders, would no longer be threatened by the Muslim world. It's important for you to understand something about what was motivating Christopher Columbus. It was largely wealth and religion. Now, I will come back in a moment to help you to understand something about what's playing out in the world today. But you need to understand something about technology too. The Chinese at this time, through the contacts that Marco Polo had had with them and others, had established themselves as the technological leaders in the world. The Chinese had actually had missions with their great ships that reached Europe, and the Pope at the time in Europe knew about Chinese technology. And so when Christopher Columbus set out on his mission, he had a Chinese compass with him. And there it is. That is a Chinese compass in 1492 that Christopher Columbus had with him so that he could navigate across the Atlantic Ocean. That spoon is made out of a particular stone, lodestone, I believe it is. I may not be entirely correct, but I'm pretty sure. As the stone sits on a metal plate, when you have that device with you on a ship, as you are moving across the ocean, that spoon will turn in the direction of where north, west, east, and south are. And so Christopher Columbus had a new type of technology with him that allowed him to get across the ocean. And it was not European technology. It was not Christian technology. It was Chinese. Fascinating. But what you're seeing now is the way that different cultures are beginning to interconnect with each other and use each other's resources to further their aims. The Chinese could have easily crossed the Atlantic Ocean and did what Columbus did. Take a look at the contrast between the size of the Chinese ships at the time and the size of Christopher Columbus's ship. And you'll see this picture gives you a very good example of it. There's a person standing on the edge of this picture and looking out over the body of water. That large boat is a Chinese junk. Junk is the opposite of what it was. It was their name, but the junks are very, very impressive boats that the Chinese built. They had the best boats, the best naval equipment in the world at the time. And there is Columbus's ship. He barely scraped enough money to have 3 of these little ships that the Queen and the King of Spain gave him the money for. Look at how small that ship is compared to the Chinese. The Chinese were so confident at that time that they were the center of the world, that they had the mandate from heaven. Remember, these were the people, the culture that had given us the Emperor Shi Huangdi, whom you saw earlier. And they believed that they really were, and in some ways, still are the center of the world. They felt they didn't need to go across the Atlantic Ocean. The world would come to them. And so all they did during those 14 days and 14 nights when they had these wonderful ships is they would travel through the Indian Ocean with them. They'd come to Europe to show the rest of the world how impressive their ships were. And then they brought them back to China. So China never discovered the Americas, so to speak. But Christopher Columbus in his little boats did. Another thing that Christopher Columbus had an advantage with, besides the Chinese compass at that time, helping him to navigate with the courage that he had and the adventurousness that he had to go across the ocean, was that 200 years earlier, the Europeans had gone through the Black Plague, the worst epidemic in human history, the bubonic plague. And during that time, it killed about 1/3 to possibly 1/2 of the European population. Something like 30 to 35 million of the 75 million people at that time had been killed in this plague. And the result was that the people who were born afterwards, like Columbus and others, they carried with them the immunity to these plagues, but they could still pass them on. Do you remember the COVID period when a person could be immune to getting COVID, but could still pass it on to somebody else? You can still carry a germ in you and pass it on to somebody else, a pathogen, but that doesn't mean that you are actually going to develop that particular condition or illness. You have the immunity to it, but you can still pass on the germs. Do you follow? It's very important about what's about to happen in the Americas. As Christopher Columbus was moving across the Atlantic Ocean in those weeks in 1492, when he believed he was reaching India by sea very quickly and China, he didn't know that he was about to encounter the American continent, where there was a flourishing civilization of First Nations, dozens and dozens of different First Nations living in sophisticated cultures of their own. To Christopher Columbus and others, this part of the world that they're about to encounter would be like they were coming to another planet. When they arrived, when they first saw land, about 6 weeks into their mission, if you look at the map, I'm going to take this because this is the critical part, and I'm going to use the microphone. Okay, take a look at the map, and you can see that in 1492, Christopher Columbus and his 80 men in his 3 ships have crossed the Atlantic Ocean, and they see land. It's around the Bahamas. That's where they had come to. To them, they thought they were in India. This is why we often call this part of the world the West Indies, the Indies. People are not Indian, but it acquired the name Indian because of this conception that has remained that the people in that part of the world were Indians. When he landed there, 1492, and he started to encounter other human beings, try to think of what this would be like for you if you are encountering a completely new world with new people that you never expected to see. How might you react? Well, it would depend on what kind of weapons you might have, what kind of power you might have. And here's what Columbus had that the so-called Indians didn't. He had a new kind of metal, steel. Steel is made from carbon and iron, and it was invented largely in Europe, but based to some extent on what the Chinese had done too. But the American world that is now being encountered for the first time did not have this material. They had guns with gunpowder. The people here did not have that. They had different kinds of resources. Christopher Columbus also had a mission given to him by not just the king and the queen of Spain, but the Pope, the Roman Catholic Pope. Listen to this. This is true. The Pope had issued a papal edict before Columbus left, in which it said that if you encounter any other individuals, when you get to India, and these people do not wish to be Christians, they are not human. You can do what you will with them. A person who will not convert to Christianity that you encounter is not a human being, is a savage. This is what he was given as the authority. What was believed by the European powers at the time was that their religion made them superior to all other humans, unless you become a Christian. But there was something else, too, that Christopher Columbus was looking for. Gold. He'd heard this place might be El Dorado, place of gold and silver and other riches. So when he encountered these Aboriginal peoples, the Taino Indians, as they were called, the Taino Indians, the first peoples he encountered, one of the first things he said to them after they had this encounter was, could you show me where the gold is and where the silver is? He also determined, as he wrote later in his letters back to the Spanish queen, Queen Isabella, that the people who came to meet his boats, who were half naked and friendly, without guns and weapons, to him seemed like the perfect slaves. Sort of passive, nice, open. Very, very different encounter at this moment that this human being is having with other people. His conclusion was, they would be good people to do our bidding. They would be good people to give us what we want. They would be good people to be our slaves. Before long, the Taino Indians that he encountered determined that they would not be able to bring him the resources that he wanted. As a matter of fact, they determined that they had now met an adversary, not a friend. And they also concluded, somewhat under the spell of the God King themselves, that these people that were coming from this other part of the world, this other world, they have these powerful weapons. They have this religion. They seem to be very powerful. We can't fight this, even if we try. And quite a few of them committed suicide, mass suicide, so that they would not be dominated and taken over at that moment by Columbus. The others who survived, the others who tried to fight and lost, would be thrown into fires, liquidated, killed immediately. Either you become Christian, you join us, or you die. It was that stark, that simple. It wasn't just the attitude of the colonial mentality that began to lead to mass murder, but it was the diseases that broke out among the Aboriginal peoples in all these villages. They started to develop smallpox and typhus and other kinds of infectious diseases that the Europeans had immunity to, but they didn't. They didn't have the kind of medical knowledge to treat this, and the Europeans were not interested in helping them to get better. And so many villages over decades were emptied out of their populations who were dying from infectious diseases. Probably the most instructive and dramatic episode that I can help you to understand in what happened during this period was when we fast forward now about 40 years to 1532. This is where I'm going to conclude today, with a reading of something that will really help you to understand why this coming together of two worlds ended with the European powers establishing themselves here and the Aboriginal peoples losing so much. And you may have wondered from time to time, why do we have a First Nations Center here? Why have there been so much attention paid over the last decades to the abuses and exploitation that the First Nations have suffered in this country as a result of what's called the residential schools, let's say, but many other forms of abuse? And it has a lot to do with what happened during this period that I'm telling you about. And it has a lot to do with what I'm about to read you in this event. The Inca people were a great First Nation of the Americas. They had established an empire in Peru. And if you look at the map of the world and you go down a little bit, let me just see if I can do this. So you can see Peru There we go. Come on up. There's Peru. Right south of Ecuador, just west of Brazil. You can see right on the western edge of South America, going all the way down the coast. Christopher Columbus represented the first of many, many others from Spain and Portugal and England who are going to start to flood across the Americas to come and see what other resources they could get from this new continent that had been discovered. And in 1532, there was a Spanish conquistador named Francisco Pizarro who will do what Columbus did, but this time he's going to come around the Atlantic Ocean. He's going to go all the way around the tip of South America, and he's going to come up onto the western side of the Americas, and he's going to come to Peru, and he's going to encounter the Inca people. In the same way that Columbus had encountered 40 years earlier on the eastern side, the Taino Indians, and there had been many others that will eventually be encountered. The Maya, the Aztec, the Olmec people. But now the Inca people are going to suffer a similar fate. The Inca were warriors. They had a very sophisticated culture, and they were by no means peaceful people themselves. They had established an empire of conquest along the western side of South America with their own metals and wood and other techniques, but they did not have what Francisco Pizarro had. The Inca had established this great city in the mountaintops called Machu Picchu. Have any of you ever heard of Machu Picchu, the mountaintops? That was a kind of country retreat of the Inca royalty at the time, and the technology and engineering that allowed them to create this beautiful small city high up top of a mountain that could withstand earthquakes and other natural disasters. That knowledge is still being used today in earthquake prevention by the Japanese and others. The Inca had a sophisticated society too, and they were warriors too. In 1532, Francisco Pizarro landed in Peru, began to encounter the Inca people with his horses, with his guns, with his steel, with his germs, in the same way that Columbus had. And eventually, a meeting was set up between him, his men, just 200 of them, just 200, and Atahualpa, the Inca emperor, at a place called Cajamarca, a small village in Peru at the time that was the center of the Inca society then. And I'm about to read you the story of what happened that day when Francisco Pizarro, his 200 men, had a meeting with the Inca emperor and the 80,000 Inca soldiers who came to bring Atahualpa to meet Francisco Pizarro. So let me just make this clear right now. We're about to hear of a meeting of 200 people, humans, who have horses, who have guns, steel, weapons, and they're going to meet an emperor of an Aboriginal society that doesn't have those same materials, but has a lot of people and a history of warfare. And so you might think, when I ask the question, who's going to win this battle if it ever ends in a battle? Maybe it won't. Maybe it'll end like Marco Polo with some kind of friendly encounter. But if it is going to end in a confrontation, you might say, I think those 80,000 are just going to completely destroy those 200 men. Let me read you what happened. And you can understand something about also the spell of the God King at work here, but you're going to understand something too about that force of religion, arrogance, and everything else that had ended in such savagery for the victims of Columbus's missions. Some of Francisco Pizarro's men who were with him eventually wrote about this encounter. And Jared Diamond, in his book Guns, Germs, and Steel, an American historian, gained access to some of these letters. So what I'm about to read you is an eyewitness account of one of the men who was part of the 200 who was about to encounter the Inca emperor and all the 80,000 men. Listen to this. And we'll conclude. Everything about conquest, the seeds of conquest, everything about what we humans today have to think about when we encounter other cultures. And I might say everything that we need to be warned about is contained in these words. Before I read them, I will tell you one final thing so you understand the relevance of what I'm about to say. Right now, the dominant power in the world is the United States. I don't need to tell you that. I don't need to tell you much about how the United States might be even in decline right now. That's something else. The next time you see the new American Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth is his name, I'd like you to remember what his tattoo is on his chest that he's very proud of. Very, very excellent. I'm going to let Jack tell this story, okay? The only thing I'm going to say, excellent, is in the last months, this person who is overseeing the American military campaign and the bombing right now in Iran succeeded in convincing Donald Trump to rename the American Department of Defense the Department of War. This person likes war, no question. But let's hear what is this big tattoo that he has on, that he's so proud of, Jack?
He has neo-Nazi tattoos on his chest, pretty sure.
A religious tattoo. Religious, it goes back to the Crusades. But it's close. It's very, very close, Jack. They're similar. Okay, Ryden?
Is it? I don't know how to pronounce it, but is it like kufar or like non-believer in Arabic?
Something like that, but it's more than that, Ryden. Pete Hegseth is a devout Christian.
Lon?
Yes.
Ruzan
The
was
Templars, yeah. The Knights of the, yeah. Ruzan's right. Ruzan, do you want to explain that a little bit? What do you mean?
So he had like a cross type of symbol that represents like Templars or something, and like these guys were the Templars was like a faction of Crusades who had territories within the Levant region, like the Syria, Lebanon, Palestine region, and he has like ton of like different like tattoos. So yeah.
But the Templars were Christians.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to just establish something because I'm not making any of this up, okay? Because I'm about to read you something about how this entire event is going to end in such savagery and carnage because of religion. I'm going to prove it to you. I'm going to read you something you've never heard before. But I'm trying to help you to understand this is relevant to our world today. No matter what you think, of the war unfolding in the Middle East right now, whether you're a Jew, whether you're a Muslim, whether you're a Christian, whether you're not of any of those things. What we have is the leader of a military leader who has made it very clear that he is on a mission, a religious mission. Like the Crusades of old, to destroy and subdue the Muslim world. Now, I'm a Jew. I'm not going to bring my own religion and my own, questions here. Because the historic savagery and wars between the monotheistic faiths, between Jew and Christian, between Christian and Muslim, between Christian and Jew is appalling in world history. But it's real. And we're seeing it play out today, right now in Iran. The Iranian government is very brutal. It's a theocracy ruled by a very extreme Muslim minority. Put that aside. All I'm trying to say to you is, right now, massive bombing is being done by a country whose military leader right now, Pete Hegseth, who is so proud of this, has said very clearly he wants to make sure that Christians are protected in this world. All Muslims gotta go. Not only that, if you look at the spokespeople for Donald Trump, you will notice something. The lovely Miss America blonde woman who's his spokesperson. Remember, Donald Trump used to run the Miss America pageant. He likes young blonde women. You'll see them all over his MAGA movement. But the one who is the spokesperson for him right now, who speaks every day, she is very proud of the cross. She wears it very proudly in her press conferences. Religion today is a force. And we are seeing, to some extent, play out in one way a kind of repeat of what I'm about to read you.
Before you get
Not
reading,
in totality. What's that?
there's quite a bit going on in the cosmos. You got something from Razan and Carol.
Okay, let me just read this and then we're going to conclude, because I see our time is right. But this is such a critical moment.
Okay.
And then we'll come back. So what happened that day, 1532, in Cajamarca, when Francisco Pizarro and his 200 men came to meet? Well, here's the eyewitness account. Described by one of Pizarro's men. First came the squadron of Indians, dressed in clothes of different colors, like a chessboard. They advanced, removing the straws from the ground and sweeping the road. Next came 3 squadrons in different dresses, dancing and singing. Then came a number of men with armor, large metal plates, and crowns of gold and silver. So great was the amount of furniture of gold and silver which they bore, that it was a marvel to observe how the sun glinted upon it. Among them came the figure of Atahualpa on a very fine platform, with the end of its timbers covered in silver. 80 lords carried him on their shoulders, all wearing a very rich blue uniform. Atahualpa himself was very richly dressed, with his crown on his head and a collar of large emeralds around his neck. He sat on a small stool with a rich saddle cushion resting on his platform. The platform was lined with parrot feathers of many colors and decorated with plates of gold and silver. You can almost sense that this Spanish member of Pizarro's group is salivating at the gold and silver that's there. That's what they want. Behind Atahualpa came 2 other platforms and 2 hammocks in which were some high chiefs, then several squadrons of Indians with crowns of gold and silver. And these Indian squadrons began to enter the plaza to the accompaniment of great songs, and thus entering, they occupied every part of the plaza. In the meantime, all of us Spaniards were ready, hidden in a courtyard, full of fear. Here comes the detail that I absolutely love, that makes me convinced this is true. But of course, this is good scholarship. Jared Diamond is a good historian, but many of us urinated without noticing it out of sheer terror. Do you think there will be any man in the world in a place of potential combat who's going to tell you the truth about how he might have shit his pants or pissed his pants or took some drugs or drank something because he was so afraid of what he was about to face? He will never tell you that. He'll tell you about his bravery and his courage, that he acted like a machine. He was the Terminator. He won't tell you the human moment. Only the real generals will tell you about what warfare is really like for humans. The rest is just Hollywood. On reaching the center of the plaza, Atahualpa remained on his platform on high while his troops continued to file in behind him. Here comes the critical moment, and then we're going to conclude, okay? I have to let you go. Governor Pizarro now sent Friar Vicente de Valverde to go speak to Atahualpa and to require Atahualpa, in the name of God and of the King of Spain, that Atahualpa subject himself to the law of our Lord Jesus Christ and to the service of His Majesty, the King of Spain, advancing with a cross in one hand and the Bible in the other hand, and going among the Indian troops up to the place where Atahualpa was. The friar thus addressed him: I am a priest of God, and I teach Christians the things of God, and in like manner I come to teach you. What I teach you is that which God says to us in this book. Therefore, on the part of God and of the Christians, I beseech you to be their friend, for such is God's will, and it will be for your good. Atahualpa asked for the book. The book, Malachi. The book, the scriptures. Atahualpa asked for the book. And then he might look at it. And the friar gave it to him closed. Atahualpa did not know how to open the book. And the friar was extending his arm to do so when Atahualpa, in great anger, gave him a blow on the arm, not wishing that it should be opened. He can't read this book. Then he opened it himself. And without any astonishment at the letters and the paper, he threw it away. His face a deep crimson. Imagine their God King is blushing. Just think of this. If you were an Inca and you look at your emperor as more than human, but he's now been humiliated. He's blushing. How would you react? The friar returned to Pizarro shouting, come out, Christians. Come at these enemy dogs who reject the things of God. That tyrant has thrown my book of holy law to the ground. Did you not see what happened? Why remain polite and servile toward this overproud dog when the plains are full of Indians? March out against him, for I absolve you. Well, now you might think, 80,000? They just rush these guys, stamp over them, kill them all like ants. Nope. The governor then gave the signal to Candia, who began to fire off the guns. At the same time, the trumpets were sounded, and the armored Spanish troops, both cavalry and infantry, sallied forth out of their hiding places straight into the mass of unarmed Indians crowding the square, giving their Spanish battle cry, Santiago! We placed rattles on the horses to terrify the Indians. The booming of the guns, the blowing of the trumpets, and the rattle on the horses threw the Indians into panicked confusion. The Spaniards fell upon them and began to cut them to pieces. The Indians were so filled with fear that they climbed on top of one another, formed mounds, and suffocated each other. Since they were unarmed, they were attacked without danger to any Christian. The cavalry rode them down, killing and wounding and following in pursuit. And I could go on and tell you how they eventually took Atahualpa down, asked him where all the gold was, promised him they would let him go, provided they show him where all his gold was stored, and that he would convert to Christianity. He did both of those things, and then they killed him. Now, I need to let you go. There's much I could say, but this is a critical piece of historical research and a moment in history that I hope you will think about in terms of worlds coming together, cultures coming together. This is why we call this period the conquest. Next week, I will bring us up and through the 20th century, and I will catch you up as best I can. But you needed to hear this, and you need to hear this in the detail I gave it to you, but we're 5 minutes past our time, okay? So unless there's anything you'd like to say, I need to let you go, and you can always email me if you have any questions or anything else, and I'll see you here next week, okay? Thank you, everybody. And I will make sure I save this live chat, and we'll review this next week, okay, in the Cosmos? Thanks, everyone. See you soon. Okay, let's go. I'm just going to open the doors. Then, yeah. See you next week, okay, guys? Yep. Thanks, Jack. Okay, so I'm going to save first the live chat because there's some good comments here. I got a nice. Let's do that. Let's do that. Export as PDF. Okay. Thanks, Alex. See you soon. Yep. What are we doing? Yeah, that is our notes, right? In the live chat. Good. Okay. So now I'm going to turn this off. Okay, everyone. And if there's anyone still watching in the distant Cosmos, an asynchronous student, just remember, if you come for the presentation in 2 weeks, there will be some extra bonus marks for you. Okay? So you can always email me. Take care.